Well, Hare Krishna devotees, we're going to start on time. This is a new series that we're starting today as part of the Top of the Bake series that Pamanava Swami started, having different devotees give class. So we have something going on every day, and it's an opportunity for us to get to know the sanga. So this new series is interviews with modern day sages, the beauty and the messiness of the Sadhaka's journey. And we're going to be interviewing different devotees along the way here. And Sumati is going to be our first victim. I mean, our first.
I knew she was going to say that.
And so she's definitely nervous. She's going totally out of her comfort zone, and this experience is going to help her talk about the messiness and the beauty of the Sadhaka's journey. So the reason that I came up with this idea to do this was, well, for one, I'm lazy, and Padmanabha Swami kept asking me to give class, and I was like, it's too much work. Giving a class every week, it's a lot to prepare for. So I was trying to think of a way to get out of it, and this idea of doing interviews came into my mind of, well, I don't have to do much. I just have to ask some questions and let the other person do all the talking. So so due to my laziness and also the desire to have a format that will help devotees get to know each other. So this will help, hopefully I don't know how long the series will go. If it's a success, it might go on for a while. If it's a bomb, this might be the only month we're going to do it, but we'll see. We'll just launch it today and see how it goes. So I want to thank all of you for being here and participating. We are streaming on to Facebook. Somehow Krishna helped me be able to get that working. So we're good to go. So I'm going to start by introducing Sumati. I'm going to read a little bio of her, and then we'll launch into our interview. Whoops. So Sumati was born in 1942, probably before any of us here on the call were born. And she was the eldest of 3 children. Her father was an extreme disciplinarian, and he was very disappointed when, after years of hard work to provide her with a good education, she pursued a spiritual path. She moved into a small Hare Krishna preaching center in Washington, D.C. in 1970, and she was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1971. And for the next 23 years, she lived in a number of centers in the U.S., engaging in a variety of services such as book distribution, DD Seva, opening preaching centers, whatever the need was at the time. And in 1993, due to physical and emotional challenges, Sumati left her life in the Hare Krishna movement to find a more authentic way of being. And after 10 years of engaging in different physical and mental healing therapies, she took a hold of her Japamala and the Srimad Bhagavatam again. Then for some years, she cared for devotees with physical challenges and helped a few of them pass from this world. So during that time, she discovered the lectures of His Holiness Swami Tripurari and realized he was an essential Shiksha guru for her. And that was 2013. And she moved into a community of his followers in North Carolina. So that's our little bio. And the way that we're going to structure the interviews is to kind of bring out, as we said, the journey of the sadhaka and correlating it with the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell had presented in his works. And it's the stages that a hero goes through. And we're not going to go through a very extremely detailed stages that he has, but he has three main divisions that the hero goes through. And the first is the departure from the world, leaving the ordinary to do something extraordinary, basically. And then within that leaving of the world, there's often a fear that comes in, and a return back to the world again, maybe once, twice, thrice, before the hero actually gets the courage to go forward into the next stage, which is the initiation stage, which is a long stage of really becoming a hero in terms of becoming courageous and fearless. And it's this stage that the hero meets with all kinds of adversity. And oftentimes when how we're correlating this to the sadhaka's journey, because the sadhaka is a true hero. And we do run into so many obstacles and adversities on this path. And sometimes it makes a devotee feel that that Krishna doesn't love them, they're being punished. I've heard so many different things from devotees that, I've given my life to Krishna, why would he treat me like this? So coming to understand, just like in a hero's journey, that Joseph Campbell really illuminates how it's the adversity, it's the suffering, it's the struggle that transforms the heart into to something wonderful and superhuman. So we become superhuman, transcendental souls, realize our soulness instead of just our humanness by going through this, the fire of ordeal. And so I'm hoping that this series can really bring this out and be a faith building tool for everyone, because it's guaranteed that we're all going to face challenges on the journey. There's just no way of getting around it. It's Krishna's way of helping us to grow and come to him quickly. I was actually thinking this morning how that saying that don't make a molehill out of a mountain. Okay. Don't make a mountain. No, don't make a molehill into a mountain. No. So, and I was thinking how our karma is like a mountain, and Krishna's taking that mountain and making it into a molehill. And so it's a concentrated, karmic reaction that Krishna is extracting the essence and finding ways to get us to be able to learn the lessons we need to learn in a very concise and quick way. It's like turning the fire up on the stove. He definitely does that. And so we should know this when we're signing up for, because we don't know it when we're signing up, and maybe it's a good thing we don't. It's kind of like, it's just for the guests. Anyway, well, one of Guru Maharaj's jokes. So to be able to see that, to see the struggles in a different light, to see it as something to embrace rather than something to be afraid of, and to think that we're being punished. Actually, it's Krishna's really his loving embrace. And being able to see it from that vantage point is a game changer for devotees. So I'm just really hopeful that that's what this series is going to do. And my dear friend here, Sumati, this is a challenging moment for her, but she's going to do just fine. And everybody send your loving energy to her. So we're going to start with the departure from the world. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Departing from the world was not too difficult for me because I never really liked the world. I never felt real safe. Even as a child, I lived in a neighborhood with other children that were very cruel and nasty, and my father was a very heavy disciplinarian, and I just did not like the world, and I did not feel safe in the world. And I learned to not express my emotions, not tell anybody how I really felt, just to try to please everyone so that I could get by. And somehow I got through high school and college, and I knew even when I graduated from college that there wasn't anything I really wanted to pursue or do. Nothing really called to me. I wanted to find something purposeful and meaningful and something that would touch my heart, and that I would know, oh, this is it. This is my calling. And a couple of years after graduating from college, I was reading, books of Herman Hesse and C.S. Lewis, and I had a list, but I can't find it. Reading about lives of saints, and those kind of things inspired me. And I had become a vegetarian. I was practicing yoga asanas for hours a day and pranayam. And I knew I wanted a spiritual life, but I didn't know what that meant, like what it looked like and how to really live it. And my boyfriend's mother was kind of like a really inspiring person. She was a Catholic, and her faith was so palpable and real and beautiful. And I wanted that, but I didn't have it. And I didn't know how to get it. And, so my boyfriend and I were living in New York City in 1968. And I had a part-time job uptown, and I had to walk past this beautiful little cathedral every day that I worked. And I would go in and I would just lie down flat on the floor in front of a statue of Mary and Jesus and pray to them to help me.
Like Dandavats?
Yeah, like full Dandavats.
Wow,
I didn't know.
It's amazing.
It was just automatic. And I did that like for months. And then miracles started happening. And I can't remember what month it was, but we were still living in New York City. And I was listening to the radio one day, and they were playing excerpts from the musical Hare, which at the time was playing on Broadway. And in that musical was the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And as soon as I heard it, it was just so easy to sing along with. And it was so beautiful. And immediately I felt it in my heart. It made my heart feel happy. So I started singing Hare Krishna like every day for the next 2 years, wherever I was. I had no idea that Krishna was a name for God, that it had anything to do with any religion. It was just my favorite song. And then in the summer of 1970, I was hitchhiking around Europe with a girlfriend. And I had taught her the Hare Krishna song too. So wherever we went, we were just singing Hare Krishna. And her cousin had avoided the draft because the Vietnam War was going on. So her cousin, who was a good friend of ours, had moved to Copenhagen. So we were on our way to visit him. And we had been in Amsterdam for a few days. We got a ride in a Volkswagen bus. And whoever was driving the bus right after we crossed the border into Germany, he just parked the bus in a field and people either slept on the bus or got out and slept in the field. But I couldn't get to sleep and I was just singing Hare Krishna softly. And my friend was singing with me and then she fell asleep. And I stopped singing aloud. And the whole rest of the night, I heard thousands, if not millions, of angels singing Hare Krishna. It went on for hours. It was just the most beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this Hare Krishna song? This is not some ordinary song. And the next morning, there was this guy that was sleeping on the bus near us. And he was on his way to Israel to live in a kibbutz for a few years. And he said, a really strange thing happened to me last night. And I said, yeah, me too. What happened to you? And he said, well, I was listening to the two of you sing Hare Krishna. He said, but after you stopped, he said, the whole rest of the night, I heard thousands of beautiful voices continuing to sing. So I'm like, okay, this wasn't even just me. Somebody else heard it too. This is really powerful. So I started singing even more. And that's when I started noticing, feeling protected. And so I came back to the States like a month later. And shortly after that, my boyfriend had met a new friend at his work, and we were living near Washington, D.C. And he brought this friend over for dinner, and this guy was asking me about my experiences in Europe. And I always mentioned singing Hare Krishna because it was just a part of every day. And as soon as I said Hare Krishna, he was like, oh. I said, oh, do you know that song? And he said, well, I never heard of it till last Sunday. He said, I got an invitation to a vegetarian feast in this little house on O Street. And I went, and all the people that live there, they sing Hare Krishna every day too. I'm like, wow. So he gave me the address, and I don't know, a week or two later, I happened to be going into DC. And to me, this next part is the most miraculous. But I was on O Street, not near the house where he told me, but just wherever I could find a place to park. And I had just opened my car door and stood up. So I was out in the street, and there were people walking up and down the sidewalk. And I heard a voice going, hey, you. So everybody turned, but he was looking at me. And I'm like, me? And he's like, yeah, you. Are you looking for the Hare Krishna people? Now, you know, what on earth would make somebody ask me that question? But I said, yeah, I am. And he pointed down the street. He said, they moved yesterday. And he told me where they had moved to over on Q Street. And he gave me the address there. So I drove over to Q Street and parked and knocked on the door. And this beautiful young lady answered the door and said, hi, my name's Mary. all you have to do is get your toothbrush and you can live here and be happy for the rest of your life. And come on in and meet your spiritual family. So I went inside. As soon as I walked in the door, this overwhelming feeling of being home and being safe. I mean, I had never felt either of those feelings before, but somehow I just knew inside of me that I was home and I was safe, and I had no idea where that was, who these people were, what this Hare Krishna song was. I just knew it was home and it was safe. And she took me over to a table where there was pictures of Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and said, "This is your family. He's your father and your grandfather and your great grandfathers." And I was just, and then she took me for prasadam, which I was not fond of prasadam for some time. It was so spicy and hot. I was a macrobiotic at the time, and just ate brown rice and apples. And so anyway, I left later that afternoon and I went back home. Well, not really home, but where I was staying. And when I got in bed that night, I literally felt like a rope had been tied around my heart. And the other end of the rope was at that Hare Krishna house, and they were pulling on the rope. And I really did not have a choice. I actually felt like I would be doomed if I didn't respond, and I had to go. So I got my toothbrush. I left in the middle of the night and went back to that house, knocked on the door about 4:00 in the morning. Said, "Can I live here?" And the temple president pointed to a piece of paper on the wall where it said, "No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling." He said, "If you can live by these rules, yeah, you can live here." I said, "Yeah, I think I can do that." And that was that. But so then, the next weeks and months, I was the only woman, because this girl, Mary, that had been there, she left the next day to go with some other devotees to open another center somewhere. So I was the only woman in this center, and there was maybe 6 brahmacharis. But they were very kind to me, and they taught me the philosophy. And Prabhupada wasn't there, but they would play his lectures on cassette tapes every day. At first, it took me a long time to be able to understand what he was saying, because I wasn't used to the Indian accent. But it was challenging, just having to wear this orange polyester long piece of cloth. And
didn't you just have like one pile everybody picked up?
Not at that
time. Okay.
Because these were brahmacharis, and I was.
So
they would have put a woman's cloth with theirs. But then I had an experience with Prabhupada a few weeks later that introduced me to him in a way that was more real to me than just hearing about him and hearing him speak, trying to hear him speak. It was Janmashtami a few weeks after I had moved into the temple, and we all went to New Vrindavan to celebrate. Prabhupada wasn't there, but there was, probably a couple of hundred devotees from all over the country that had gone there for the festival, and I didn't know anybody except these 6 brahmacharis, and they didn't pay any attention to me once we got there. So I was just kind of like, there was one woman that was kind to me, but it was pretty awkward. And then all the fasting for Janmashtami. There was no feast at midnight. You just got a half a cup of the most horrible tasting break fast. It was like, and then fasting the next day for Prabhupada's appearance day. I was feeling pretty out of it. And but in the morning, on the morning of Prabhupada's appearance day, a devotee had given a Bhagavatam class, and he had said during the class, if you find yourself wanting some service to do and don't know what to do, just pray to Prabhupada and he'll send you some. So later that day, I was sitting under a tree trying to read Bhagavad Gita, but I was falling asleep. And then I remembered and I thought, okay, so I prayed to Prabhupada to send me some service. And literally within 2 seconds, this girl approached me and said, oh, there's going to be some weddings this evening. Could you go in that field over there and pick flowers? And I'm like, sure. And it's like Prabhupada was with me. I could almost see him and I could definitely feel his presence. And it was just such a powerful experience of like, okay, I'm doing the right thing and I found a teacher and this is all good. And no matter how hard it is, it's good. And then,
Yeah, so that was your initial experience coming to Krishna,
yeah,
which is more positive than negative, according to,
absolutely.
it's very positive
very positive. And
experience.
it got more positive once they sent me to Boston.
Mm.
You know, they because there were no other women there, so they sent me to the Boston temple, and it was beginning of January 71, and then Prabhupada came in July and initiated me, and the ISKCON press was in Boston, but they were moving to New York. So there was lots and lots of devotees, but most of them were leaving. And I was really attracted to deity service. And so they asked Prabhupada if I could get both initiations so I could take care of the deities. And he was, along with initiations, Prabhupada was coming to install Radha Krishna deities. So, so that happened. And so for the next 6 years, I took care of those deities, and they really were the 6 happiest years of my life. I had so much service to do and just so much sweetness being with the devotees. And again, there were a lot of hardships. Like Boston is an extremely cold city. It's on the coast, it's north, the winters are brutal. And we didn't have any money, so the city turned off our electricity and heat. And so, you know, I had to take 6 ice cold showers a day in order to do the artis. But I don't know, somehow I was in ecstasy that was just, Radha Gopi Vallabha were so kind to me, and Prabhupada, and I was just really happy. I literally didn't have time to sleep more than 4 hours a night. And I just had so much service, but it was just sweet.
I just want to interject here that Sumati is now voluntarily taking cold showers again. She's been watching the Sarinhof and breathing and freezing cold showers. So it's funny, she's gone full circle. We hated those cold showers back in the ashram.
Yeah.
So beautiful beginning. And like many devotees, there were some, and the hero's journey also, you began to have some experiences that were quite challenging. And you want to speak to any of that? And and just how you've kind of dealt with them and processed them over the years.
I guess it started when they arranged for me. Well, we got a new temple president in
This is the messiness.
1977, and previous to him coming, the Boston Temple, once the press devotees left, there were really just about 10 to 12 of us, and we were all brahmacharinis or brahmacharis, and everyone was absorbed in their service. There was no conflicts. It was just a very smooth flowing, just everyone fitting into their place and doing their service, and everything got done. And books were being distributed, and we were having wonderful Sunday feast programs, and the deity service was going on, and it was. And then one of the traveling Sankirtan parties came, and the temple president decided that he wanted to go join them. So I happened to be coming out of the temple room one day, and I see the temple president looking around, sneaking down the steps with a sleeping bag under his arm, and running out the front door of the temple and jumping into this bus and taking off, and we never saw him again. And, so the rest of us, we just decided, okay, well, we're just going to go on. We don't need a temple president because we're all just doing our service nicely, and everyone likes their service. But somehow some higher authorities got wind of the fact that we didn't have a temple president, and they sent one, and he was a householder, and the whole mood changed, and other householders kind of came within a week of them coming, and it turned out he was a very abusive person, to say the least. And he had 2 wives. He wanted me to be the third, and I did not want that. But anyway, he arranged for me to marry somebody else who turned out to be extremely abusive. And we left Boston and moved to New Vrindavan, and it was quite cultish there with different departments and the management. And I think all over the movement at the time, this was the early 80s now, shortly after Prabhupada left. And there was so much confusion, and with Prabhupada gone, and different leaders, people had been appointed to try to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps and initiate devotees, and they really weren't qualified to step into that service. And there were zones, and you had to, there was so much unrest and challenges really for everyone. And so for the next few years, I was, one more year with that husband. He was, like I said, very abusive. And finally, after he beat me so badly one time that I couldn't walk for a couple of months, I went to the temple president and said, I'm not married anymore. I don't ever want to see this person again. And I never did see him again.
So I just want to maybe interject here, because I don't know, some of the devotees who are listening to this, it's like, it might be kind of shocking to hear.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know.
No, well, just because,
But this
this was the reality of the pioneer days of the Hare Krishna movement. And one thing that I just wanted to say is that we didn't have any elders, really. I mean, if you were in your late 20s, you were,
I was probably one of the oldest.
yeah, I mean, I came at 22 and I was one of the older women. So it was a time that, yeah, we were kind of trying to figure out what the teachings were. And, there was a lot of fanaticism and there was a lot of cultish behaviors as a result of misunderstanding the philosophy and not having really good leaders at the time and good guidance. And I feel like we all got a lot of special mercy for having gone through those times. I think that just like in the hero's journey, it's like to the degree that, well, it's also in a Sadhaka, it's very much in our teachings that as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So the surrender that the surrender and the austerities that the devotees performed in those early days did not go unnoticed. And I really feel there was a tremendous amount of reciprocation in the journey for us, going through those really hard times. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah,
I mean, that's my own personal, and I'm just wondering if that's kind of how you felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, there was such a dichotomy of like these things happening, but at the same time, we're reading Bhagavad Gita, we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar of Devotion, Krishna book, and I mean, the philosophy itself was so beautiful and perfect, and I knew it's what I was looking for, and it just didn't really, and I was taught like, oh, all of your authorities are pure representatives of Prabhupada, and I'm like, they couldn't possibly be because I know Prabhupada would never treat me like this. So it was like dealing with this like constantly, but like I said, I had those 6 years with the deities in Boston that just solidified my faith. And then I had that experience with Prabhupada, picking flowers, and so I had things like that, and a couple experiences with the deities that just were like I could fall back on those experiences and hold on to them and know that that I had to just keep going, and that and then I know at some point I got introduced to the verse in the Bhagavatam. I don't know it in Sanskrit except the first few words, Tate nu kampam. But it's, one who earnestly, my dear Lord, one who earnestly awaits for your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him, while patiently suffering the results of my past misdeeds, and at the same time, serving you and glorifying you. So, and I'd read that Prabhupada said every devotee should take this verse and hold on to it and use it as a guide, that yes, there were going to be hardships and adversities, but
the last line of that is so that person, the spiritual world becomes his rightful claim.
Right.
So
right.
It's guaranteed that if you can just go through this and remember the Lord, see it, we embrace it and see it as Krishna, or we see it as something else and taking another path.
And there did come a point where I couldn't go on. I just, I got married a second time, and that husband was not abusive physically. I mean, he was not emotionally present, but he was. And we actually did a lot of service together, managing preaching centers, opening preaching centers, and doing a lot of speaking in college classes. He did the speaking. I'm not a speaker. And we ended up in Boulder, Colorado, managing the preaching center there. And then, I don't know, things just got, for me, very physically challenging. My body was just wearing down from so many years of not getting enough sleep or the proper nutrition, and severe back problems and stomach problems, and then emotionally, just having a really hard time in this marriage emotionally. And I just don't want to go into detail, but and I realized that, kind of my whole life, I kept ending up being with people that were taking advantage of me in one way or another. And I just thought it was time to just leave that life behind and go into a period of healing, physically and emotionally. So I did that for the next 9 or 10 years. And, I had to support myself, but, I found, especially with a group of women in Denver, just a really loving support system and sisters. One of them had also been in the movement for many years. And I discovered dancing and how that just brought me so much joy. And I made jewelry out of semi-precious stones and supported myself mostly doing that. And
What brought you back?
a miracle, and another Krishna miracle, which is
It's the miracle.
it was I had gotten into a relationship. I was back in Maryland. I had moved back to Maryland to help my parents, because they were in their late 80s by that time, and I had had very little to do with my parents all these years, for the over 30 years. So I went back to help them, and I had friends there, devotee friends. And yeah, I had gotten into this relationship, and my heart was totally shattered into a billion pieces. And in the process of grieving that, I got a phone call one night from a devotee in Boston who I didn't know. I never heard of him or met him, but he just said, it's a long story, but I will make it short. He basically said that the deities in Boston are Radha Gopi Ballabha. And he told me that Gopi Ballabha's voice had awakened him at 3:00 in the morning and told him to call me and tell me to come back to Boston to see him, Krishna. And I just got chills. In that moment, I just knew with no doubt at all that Gopi Ballabha was God, and that he remembered me, and that he loved me. And and I found my beads. I hadn't chanted for years. I didn't even know where my beads were, and I just somehow, I had moved probably 3 or 4 times, and I just stuck my hand somewhere, and there were my beads. And yeah, and so then I ended up taking care of one of my closest friends for 4.5 years who had multiple sclerosis and cancer. And then she passed away, and I got invited to come and go to Alachua, Florida to take care of an elderly devotee there. So I went and did that and ended up taking care of a number of devotees in different places. And I mean, I was chanting my rounds every day and reading, but I wanted more spiritually. And that's when I realized that I needed a guide, I needed a teacher. And a lot of devotees felt that Prabhupada's books were enough for them, but I didn't feel that, because I was, there were contradictions in different purports in the Bhagavatam. Things that Prabhupada said, and then Krishna said something different in the Bhagavad Gita. And then my dear friend Archana-siddhi and her husband, late husband, Karnamrita, introduced me to His Holiness Tripurari Swami. And so I started hearing from him and read his Bhagavad Gita. And then in 2013, I moved to North Carolina to be with Archana and Karnam and Mahara and Mitrasena and other devotees who are, all over the state of North Carolina. There's quite a number of devotees who are Guru Maharaj's disciples and students. And then, he came to North Carolina, and he was just so kind to me. And I don't know that I'd ever had a temple authority man be kind to me before, but he was. And
I just want to say that he was so kind to her. She has little Balaram and Krishna deities, and Guru Maharaj just loves those deities. And she had him in her room at the Krishna Road Temple. We had a little preaching center temple that Mahara and Mitra turned one of their houses into a preaching center. And Sumati was there doing caretaking for the deities. And whenever Guru Maharaj would come, he'd say, I want to have lunch in Sumati's room. Krishna and Balaram were there. They just love those deities. And now they're here on our altar, which is awesome. And they're just really, really special deities. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you think the most profound change in yourself has been since you've been a devotee, or how do you see yourself differently than you were?
Well, I feel like I'm still in process, and I will be for ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You read in so many places in Prabhupada's books where Prabhupada says it's a gradual process. And but then Prabhupada would always say, oh, you can go back to Godhead at the end of this life. So I used to equate gradual with this lifetime. Now I'm realizing that gradual can mean forever.
We are students forever.
Students forever, just
always becoming more, even more spiritual.
But just I think what I notice is that my desire to love God, Krishna, keeps growing. It was kind of always there, but it wasn't real. And now that I have more of a sense of who God is, his different manifestations, not from personal experience, but just from reading and hearing, and from hearing from Guru Maharaj, and now from Padmanabha Swami, and they're both so totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness, that it's like having living examples of these devotees that are really advanced, and really Krishna conscious. I mean, because I never got to be around Prabhupada in the day I got initiated, but that was pretty much it. And I had no conversation with him. And now, I mean, it's just been, Guru Maharaj would come and spend 6 weeks with us, and I would get to do lots of service for him. And now we have Padmanabha Swami staying in the tiny house, and I get to do lots of service for him, and just being with these, and being with Archana-siddhi, who's a very exalted, highly Krishna conscious person. I mean, I'm so blessed. I mean, I have a gratitude for my life now, that and I guess it's helped me. I'm so grateful for what I have now, and I realize that that I probably wouldn't have what I have now had I not gone through all the rest of the difficulties and dealt with those obstacles. And I told Archana the other day, it somehow came up when we were getting the computer thing set up, that I grew up really hating my father, and but I was able to take his ashes to Vrindavan, and as I had the open bag of his ashes, and I was just submerging it in Mother Jamuna's waters, and at that second, my heart literally burst open with love and gratitude for this man. Because even though I hated him and everything he did to me and his attitude towards me, if it weren't for that, I might not have had the impetus or to take shelter of Prabhupada and a spiritual movement. But for whatever reason, I suddenly was able to completely appreciate him and the role that he had played in my life. And I can see that with, all the different people that I felt made my life miserable at one time, that they were all like a catalyst to help me. I guess I have to tell one little story of when I was in Boston. I was distributing books one day at a university, and I was taking a prasadam break, and I had a pile of books on a cloth on the ground next to me, and the Krishna book was on top. And the student walked by, and he just walked right over to the Krishna book, and he picked it up, and he started looking at all the pictures and like scanning he said, "Wow, I love this book." And he said, I'm a communications major, and I have an hour-long radio show on our radio station. And this university had a huge radio station that went all over the state of Massachusetts. He said, "We could do dramatic readings of these stories on my radio show once a week." I'm like, okay. So when I got back to the temple, I told the temple president, Satsarupa, and he was a writer. So every week he would would pick a story, he would write a script. This other boy from the university, he would make a background tape with whatever sounds we needed for the story. And we did this radio show. So one of the stories we did was Krishna subduing the Kalia, Serpent. And I always played the part of Mother Jasoda in whatever story we were doing. And so when Mother Jasoda sees Krishna wrapped up in the coils of Kalia, she just screams in desperation Krishna's name. And So a couple months later, Prabhupada was in New York, and Satrupa took him tapes, recordings of these radio shows. And Prabhupada was listening to that one. And when he hears Mother Soda screaming, he said, "Stop the tape." He said, "Who is that?" And Satrupa said, "Oh, that's Sumati." And Prabhupada said, "You tell her to always cry for Krishna like that." So that's
an awesome
that's
story.
just something that's, with me. That's always with me. And I still haven't learned to really cry for Krishna, but it's, that instruction is there and I'm gradually working on it.
So just to kind of wrap up, we want to maybe give a few minutes for devotees to ask any questions that they might have or comments. Just one final thing, because that's the last stage of the hero's journey is the return, when the hero is fully transformed and able to take something back to the world that he came from or she came from, that will help others to become more than what they are. So I just wonder if there's any advice or any anything that you would want to say to our
Well, I'm far from being fully transformed, but
I
I would just,
any advice or any gifts or anything you'd like to
I
share.
would just say, no matter what you're going through, to keep going through it, stay on the path, follow your heart, follow your guru, and Krishna will help you. Krishna is always with us. He's in the hearts of anyone who's trying to love him and know him and serve him, and he will always, he will never forget you. He will always help you. And now it's a worldwide movement with so many different groups, and there are
Elders.
amazing, there are elders, there are amazing advanced souls on the planet, and take shelter, somewhere. Just stay on the spiritual path and don't leave.
Thank you, Sumati. It's really beautiful, and you did a wonderful, wonderful job. I can't tell you how much anxiety she was in about this, but she did, I think, superb. You get an A+.
Yeah, I was having a panic attack yesterday.
So if anybody has a question or a comment, you could unmute yourself. I think you can unmute yourself. If not, I can unmute you maybe. Anybody have anything they would like to share? I've got some things in the chat here.
That was really good, Sumati.
Thank you, Laura. You were probably praying for me, and that surely helped me.
It was awesome. Yeah, glad you did it.
Your turn.
Glad you broke the ice for all of us.
Yes. Thank you, Sumati. This is Shamasaki. I love you, and I know you have so many more like amazing, miraculous stories of Krishna consciousness and how you've helped so many. So thank you for being in my life.
I'm so glad you're in my life too, and I hope you come to visit soon.
I will.
Joy. Any other comments or questions?
Sumati, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, this is Ganesh. Thank you so much for this. This was extremely inspiring, especially those like the miraculous things. I love hearing that stuff, and that you persevered and came back and everything. That was really, really inspiring. But I wanted to specifically ask you, you mentioned that when you served the deities for the 6 best years of your life, you said that there were a couple instances that really solidified your faith. And I've been recently getting much more into deity worship, so I'm really interested in that. Like, what were those things, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I was thinking of one particular time. It was another miraculous moment that at that particular time, there was only maybe 6 of us in the temple, and we all had the flu very, very bad. I mean, we were really, really sick. But the deity service had to go on. And at the time, I think Satrupa and I were the only Brahmins that could do any deity service. And but he had so many other things he had to do. So I was doing all the deity service. And it came time for the evening artik, and then putting the deities to rest, changing their clothes into their pajamas, putting them to rest. And I was so sick. I mean, you know, throwing up and passing out. But I knew I had to do it. So somehow I took my shower and got dressed. The second that I stepped on the altar, Krishna took my body away from me. I was in absolute, I didn't have a body. I was just able to offer the arti, and
She still had her body. She transcended her body.
but Krishna gave me, I was in ecstasy. I mean, I was not in this world anymore. It was like, I was just able to do the whole service and, you know, change the deities' clothes, put on their night clothes. And as soon as I finished all that, I fell back in my body again and collapsed. But
Wow, that's amazing.
um,
Can I ask you one more thing?
Yeah, deities are
Yeah,
really.
he wants to ask something.
Oh,
Go
what?
ahead.
Sorry.
I heard the story that there was like a really big feast. I was told that it was you who was the pujari when this happened. There's some really big feast at a temple. Maybe it was in Boston or something. And then after the feast, the clothes of the deities were changed, and the clothes that had been worn by the deities so many times before wouldn't fit anymore. Was it you?
Oh,
Dressed them?
yeah.
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I'd forgotten that story. Yeah, it was like the morning after the one of the Sunday programs, and we had a wonderful cook in Boston at the time. I mean, he was Maturesh was his name, and so I went to dress the deities in the morning after bathing them, and their clothes didn't fit, and I'm like, what? This is crazy. The skirts would not snap into place. So I went and got another outfit. No, and they didn't have that many outfits at that time, but none of them fit. And I'm like, okay, I had to get a row of safety pins and safety pin them together. But then the temple president didn't believe me. So evidently the next night he sneaked onto the altar after I had put the deities to rest and took all their clothes, and he tried, and then he believed me because they still didn't fit.
2 inches too short.
And just little things would happen. Like I had a desire one time for to have some kumkum to put in Radharani's part, because I read about how Radharani always has kumkum in her part. And our peacock, we didn't have a nice peacock feather fan for the arti. It was really falling apart, and the peacock feathers were old. But I didn't, I looked all over Boston. I couldn't find peacock feathers anywhere. And there was no Google back then. And so one day shortly after that, a package came in the mail. And it was just addressed to the pujari with no return address. And inside was a container of kumkum and a little mirror. And that was it. No note, no nothing.
That's
No,
amazing.
no, just a package of kumkum. And a
Wow.
few days after that, I happened to be cleaning the hallway downstairs by the front door. And there was a knock at the door, and I answered the door, and this tiny little Indian lady was standing there with 2 peacock feather fans. And she just said, "Here, these are for Krishna." And she wouldn't come in. She wouldn't. She just, "No, here, give these to Krishna." So, yeah.
Yeah. I've had so many experiences similar
I'm
to that,
sure
you
you
know,
have.
and it's really amazing just how, you know, the thought about wanting to do something for the deities and then suddenly it manifests in some very unusual way. So, yeah. I
Yeah.
think we,
We're all on an extraordinary journey. And just,
there's a lot of magic.
yeah, even though there's a lot of physical pain sometimes, emotional pain, whatever, it's worth all of it. Just keep going. And I'm sure more obstacles are coming, but
Yeah, and it's, you know, I always think about how these obstacles are training us for that final lesson of
Yeah.
being able to really go through that with grace, that we can leave this world with faith, full faith that we're not, you know, that the soul is eternal, and
Right.
we're just going into another room, as Prabhupada said. That's
changing our clothes.
changing our clothes or going from one room to another. I love that example, just being able to flow.
Mhm,
And I have that desire to get to that place. And, you know,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
wonderful. Anything else? And the last comment or question before we end the call today? Should I tell people who next week is going to be, we're going to be interviewing? Yes. So Vaishnav Maharaj is on for next week, and Padmanabha Swami will be doing the translation. So we hope that, yeah, everyone will be able to, the Spanish devotees can get on and hear it in their, you know, right from directly from Vaishnav Maharaj, and the English devotees will hear the translation from Padmanabha Swami. So, and then the week after that, we have Krishangi is going to be doing it. And the final week of this month is Guru Nishta. So this is our lineup, and we're putting together a lineup for next month. So you may be on that that lineup. We may be getting an email inviting you to, everyone's going to get a turn. So maybe we'll see. We'll see how long we can do this for. You know, depending on the feedback that we get, and if devotees are finding it helpful and it's inspiring, then yeah, we'll keep it up. Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you all on the call, and we will see everybody soon. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank
Sumati
you.
and Archana ki jai.
Jai.
Jai. And it was wonderful having devotees smile and give us enthusiastic
Yeah.
gestures.
Yeah, it helped.
It really does help. It definitely helps. Haribo, Jai, Haribo.